Hey there, it's Brad from 4Player Network, and this is the definitive, most immersive, most cinematic, and most explosive top 10 list of 2013. My number 10 is The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. Honestly, going into this game, I was super worried. I was afraid modern day Nintendo was going to screw up the sequel to my second favorite game of all time, A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. I was worried that the game was going to be too short, too easy, and just in general not as substantial, I guess, compared to your typical console Zelda game. Sure enough, I was kind of right. But the good news is that it was fun to play, and that's why it makes it onto my top 10 list. The controls were fast and responsive. I just feel like I had so much control over Link, and I was just ripping through dudes. And ultimately, that could be seen as a positive, but I think that's what made the game too easy. I felt like I was playing an old school game with modern day controls, kind of like playing an NES Castlevania game, but with Alucard from Symphony of the Night, where I'm flying all over the place. You know, it just... what was thrown at me couldn't compete against the control I had. And sure enough, I beat the entire game, 100%ed it, and I didn't die once. And the problem is that kind of throws off the balance of the novel system that this game introduces, where you can rent the items and have all the items at once, but if you die, you lose everything. So it's supposed to create this tension where, like, oh man, I need to play really well so I don't lose these things. And I need to save up the rupees so I can buy them in case I do die. But if you don't die, the system is kind of pointless, and you just have everything from the beginning with no real threat. And ultimately, that was, I guess, that's probably why it's lower on my list. But I do like how Nintendo kind of trimmed the fat with this game. You know, there's no, horrible, like, long-winded tutorials and hand-holding that's, telling you where to go and how to do everything and constantly interrupting you with story bullshit. All that's gone. It just lets you play it, and it's fast and it's fun, and the puzzles are actually clever. That new wall mechanic is one of the best ideas I've seen in a Zelda game in maybe a decade. It just makes exploring the dungeons fun in a way that, even though they resemble dungeons from A Link to the Past, because you have this new dimension, you have to think about them differently. It's just a fun game to play. The music, the soundtrack is one of the best of the year. It's absolutely incredible. The Dark World theme from the original Zelda is one of my favorite game songs of all time, and there's 2 versions of it in A Link to the Past. That alone is probably worth it being on my top 10 list. So yeah, Legend of Zelda, number 10. My number 9 is Fire Emblem Awakening for the 3DS. Now, I'm a big Fire Emblem fan. I've been playing the series since Fire Emblem 7, and I was surprised when I first started playing this game that the series finally kind of took some big steps forward in terms of adding new systems. Like the partner system is great because not only does it add a new layer of strategy in battle, but it also kind of deepens the support system that the game has kind of always had, but it's never been very easy to do. But because, your characters build relationships through, this pairing system, it allows for you to easily manage kind of who has which relationships. And you can develop these stories kind of the way you want and even marry your characters. And that's what I loved, absolutely loved when I first started playing this game. And in fact, halfway through the year, I had this as my number one favorite game of the year so far. But why is it down on number 9 now? That's kind of the question. Truth is, I had not finished the game at that point. I probably played it for another 30 or 40 hours, and by the end of it, I was kind of disappointed by the fact that, honestly, the new pairing system ended up kind of killing the strategy for me. I played the game on what was it, classic difficulty or the harder difficulty, and I still found it a little too easy because I found myself making these god pairings where, oh, I'm gonna marry this guy with this guy and they're just gonna be undefeatable and they're gonna have a kid and that kid's gonna be so fucking powerful, and sure enough, it was all, everyone was too goddamn powerful and strategy was kind of thrown out the window, which is what I liked about the older Fire Emblem games. And it was still really fun. I was still really addicted to it. I like the stories and I like the characters, and I will love Tharja forever and our kids, but you know, it just, the excitement for this game kind of wore off by the end of it, and I think my final playtime was like 70 hours, so that says something. But I really hope that in the next Fire Emblem game they don't throw out these systems, they just kind of rethink them and make sure that they're making a game that's a little more balanced, like I guess some of the older Fire Emblem games were. Oh man, guys, Anarchy Reigns is my number 8. And I gotta be honest with you, Anarchy Reigns is kinda fucked. Like seriously, the single player campaign is rubbish. It's this rush job that kind of resembles its predecessor Mad World, but isn't as nearly stylish or well written or fun as Mad World was, and probably not even worth playing. And the focus of Anarchy Reigns is the multiplayer. And guess what? You go online and no one's playing, and it's dead. Probably completely dead. So, why is it on my list? Why is it number 8? I'll tell you why it's number 8. Because I play this game with a small circle of friends who all really enjoyed it. So I get games, we play together, and we have a good time. And the truth is, we have a good time because the core of it is really well made and fun to play. And Platinum Games kind of did the impossible. It made a multiplayer online brawler work with like no input lag and latency. I don't know how they did it. It's like voodoo magic, but it works. And they designed systems from the ground up to not play like Bayonetta, but to play like a fighting game that, you know, where you have a bunch of dudes kind of brawling at the same time, so you're doing fucking air juggles with teammates and stuff, and it's just really kind of fun. I spent most of my time with this game playing 2v2 matches, but the multiplayer options are just crazy. There's like all kinds of matches all the way up to 16-player brawls, like this death ball mode, which is this kind of this crazy high-impact sport, and there's like capture the flag and stuff. It's absolutely insane. The stages are fucking all kinds of crazy shit's happening. It's like a Power Stone stage where you can just barely keep up with the environment as you're desperately trying to kill your opponent. And truth be told, the game is just, it's just fucking rad. There's like a badass hip-hop soundtrack, and your fucking song starts playing, and you're like, oh, this is my shit, and you just want to beat the shit out of the other guy on the other team. All the fucking characters, they look cool, and they have crazy fucking weapons and shit. And I had played fucking Iran, and she got fucking lightning nunchucks, and you just fucking ripping through dudes. And that's the second time I said ripping through dudes on this top 10 video, and I'm only at my number 8. But hey, Anarchy Reigns, I'm just gonna tell you this: the game is cheap as shit. You get a small group of people to play the game with, you're gonna have a good time. Maybe even come play with me, and you can bitch at me like everyone else for using Iran. And yeah, fuck all you. But seriously, the game's cool. Alright, let's keep rolling here. Number 7, Super Mario 3D World. Who knows what's going to happen on this list? Those last two, I just swapped them at the last second. So I don't even know where this list is going to end up by the time I finish recording it. But I do know that Super Mario 3D World is a damn good game. And guess what? Guess what? I really didn't like this when I started playing it. I was playing it, and I was like, this is boring as shit. And I stopped playing it, and I was going to send it back. But then I tried it again, and I played, and I was like, this is boring as shit. And I was going to send it back. But then, the third time I sat down and played it, I was like, you know what, that was pretty fun. That was pretty clever. Let's see this next level. And I was like, you know what, that's pretty fun and clever. Let's see the next level. And guess what? That's the strength of Mario games when they're at the top of, when the Tokyo team is at the top of their game. Is that every fucking level you're seeing something new, and it's just so fun and creative, and you just keep going. And finally the game started to get more difficult, and that's when I really started enjoying it, you know, and experimenting with the different characters and finding out, you know, which character is best for this situation. And then I beat the game, and I unlocked Rosalina, and she was cool because she had the spin attack and finally had a way to attack enemies like I did in the previous 3D Mario games like Galaxy and Mario 64. And I was all of a sudden like, hey, I can not have to just jump on these enemies and pray I'm gonna land on them with this iffy fucking perspective, and I could just fucking have some fun as platforming. And that's what the game became fun, challenging platforming, where I was constantly running into new ideas. And all the worlds after you beat the game, those are like where the real fucking fun is. So if you played this game and you stopped after you beat Bowser, you got to keep going, because it's really fucking great. And I did everything in the game with the exception of that last world, because I didn't want to collect everything. But I was just surprised my arc of love for this game, because I really didn't like it when I started out, but by the end of it, it just kept climbing and climbing and climbing up my list of favorites of the year. And I was actually surprised that it made it onto my top 10 list. But hey, I adore this game. I absolutely adore it. All right, my number 6 game of the year. I'm sorry, quote unquote game of the year. Am I right? Is Gone Home. Here's why I love Gone Home. Now, I know there's some controversial subject matter in this game that's really pissing people off for some goddamn reason. I'm just going to say this. Story and the characters are incredibly well written, incredibly well acted, and the story, believe it or not, like any good coming-of-age story, is human and relatable. And you know, I identify with the character in this game, even though I might not be in the exact same situation that she was in. And that's what's very, you know, compelling about this game. But what also makes it interesting is just the way you absorb the story in this game. We're so used to story being kind of force-fed to us in a very linear fashion as they stuff fucking cinematics down our throats. And you know, that works for some games, but there's something very satisfying about kind of discovering a story on your own in a very kind of realistic way. Like, just imagine for a second that this is, you know, the subject matter is something that interests you in a setting that interests you. Take your sci-fi setting or your fucking medieval setting. Like this is a formula that could work. In fact, like, elements of this have worked before. I think of like old Thief games, and what makes those exciting is kind of, you know, sneaking around a place and like finding, you know, like logs and stuff to where I can, you know, like pick up information that's telling me maybe where my target is, or you know, where my, you know, the item I'm trying to steal is. I mean, that's what made those games really cool, and that's kind of what makes Gone Home cool. And I think about games like L.A. Noire or Batman, where you're playing a detective and you're trying to piece it together, but honestly, like, I think Gone Home does it better than that, because you feel like you're earning your solution by scrounging around. The fact that you can miss things, important things that will help you piece together the story of some of these family members, just completely miss them, is a very, like, you know, exciting thing. You know, it makes you like, oh, I gotta cover every inch of this game so I don't miss anything. And that's what I really like about Gone Home. Not to mention, it's just got a really kind of amazing atmosphere. Like, I mean, imagine if you know, were away from your family for a year, they moved into a new house, you go home and it's a dark, storming night and they're fucking gone. It's going to be kind of creepy exploring a house with all the lights out. And some of the scariest moments of the year were me entering a room for the first time, the lights are out, and the only thing I care about at that given moment is finding a goddamn light switch, because it was legitimately spooky. But you know what? Spooky in a way that we get spooked in real life. That's what's cool about Gone Home. It's kind of real and amazing. And sorry that some of y'all don't think it's a game. I liked it. All right, what are we on? Number 5. Number 5 is Rogue Legacy. I love Rogue Legacy because it reminds me of Castlevania, man, and I love Castlevania. This is the closest thing I got to Castlevania this year, and well, you know what? It's pretty awesome in its own right. It's like one part Castlevania and then one part like Rogue game. And Rogue meaning, hey, you know, it's really easy to die, and when you die, you kind of lose your shit. But in this game, the twist is there's some persistence, because, you know, you're leveling up your bloodline, if you will. But your kids, you don't know what class they're going to be, and you don't know if they're going to have some fucked up traits, like they fart all the time, or they're fucking crazy, and they see enemies that aren't even there. But that's what makes the game fun and exciting, and makes your experience every time you play kind of different. That's what makes fucking roguelikes cool. But I also really like Rogue Legacy because it just controls kind of like a dream. I feel like I have a lot of control over my character, and it's less about, you know, comboing enemies and more about, you know, like movement and avoiding enemies. And when you enter a room and there's shit all over it, you're like, oh god, and you just fucking rush and you're trying to kill shit as quick as you can, because you know if you wait too long, there's gonna be fucking projectiles flying all over the place and it's gonna be impossible to dodge. So there's just like this really satisfying fast pace about Rogue Legacy that just makes me want to get in there and go, and then I die and I play it again, and then it's fucking 3 in the morning and I'm going again. And I just love Rogue Legacy. Did I mention this game has a crazy ass fucking soundtrack? It's so good. It's so good. Castlevania, why have you left me, man? Why have you left me? At least there's indie developers out there who are making games like Castlevania, because fuck you, Konami. Fuck you. Rogue Legacy, number 5. Suck his dick. My number 4 favorite game, 2013, is The Last of Us. Man, I fucking love The Last of Us. I love The Last of Us because it has what Naughty Dog does incredibly well. That's great story, it's great characters, great writing, great acting, believable relationships that I absolutely love. I love it in the Uncharted series, and I love it here. But what The Last of Us also has, which I think Uncharted 2 also had, is really great gameplay. And I know some people are like, oh, you know, I like the story and the characters, but I don't really love the gameplay. I like the gunplay here. I think the shooting it's very visceral and physical in a way that it isn't in other shooters. You know, when you get shot, you get kind of knocked on your ass or stunned. So every bullet is kind of dangerous. It's not like you're just taking fucking machine gun spray from nowhere and you're just absorbing it. You know, I don't want to get shot because it's going to change the way I move around the environment, and that's, you know, very satisfying. But I also like just sort of the engagement, that sort of that combat narrative, to where I come up on an enemy and I might be like, kind of like trading shots back and forth, but I can disengage, I can run away, I can climb, I can hide, and I can actually lose the enemy in ways that you can't in other shooters, where if you're spotted, they're just all fucking shooting at you at once. And that's very satisfying. It's very fitting for this setting, and I like that feeling of oh god, I only have 2 bullets, let's rush down this enemy and see if I can hit him with my melee weapon, and if that goes bad, well, maybe I have another option. It just felt very scrappy in a very satisfying way. So it's actually the combination of you know, the stuff that makes, you know, your typical Naughty Dog game great. And I love Ellie and I love Joel and I love that relationship. But I also really enjoyed playing the game. One of my biggest regrets, though, was that I never tried the multiplayer. I know there's other members of the site who absolutely adore the multiplayer and have probably skyrocketed that game to their number 1. But, you know, hey, I still really love this game.
Give me your hand.
My number 3 makes me a little sad because I know most of you didn't play Puppeteer. But oh my god, charm. Charm is a word that's thrown around a lot at like Nintendo games. They're like, oh, this is light and colorful and charming. But man, I'm telling you right now, this Puppeteer is a 2D platformer that puts that stuff to shame, because not only does it have some pretty solid mechanics, like the main character has a giant pair of scissors and he can use that to propel himself through the environment as he's sort of cutting it up, which is cool, and that's just one of several mechanics that he has. But it's all the other things. It's the writing, it's the acting, it's the characterizations, it's so fun. Like, the entire time I was playing this game, I had a giant fucking smile. The entire aesthetic of the game is like, it's like this play that you're watching, and you see the curtains and they're moving when stuff bangs in the story, or you know, you see a spotlight that focuses on the main character as he's sneaking around an environment, or the crowd will cheer when you do something awesome, or they'll gasp when the villain does something that's horrible. And it's so immersive, kind of like when you watch a real play, where, you know, for a few hours it's like you feel like you're stepping into another world, and when it's over, it's like, oh wow, wait, back to reality. That's the feeling I got, that immersive feeling, when I was playing Puppeteer. It's 100% committed to its aesthetic, and again, the writing is just so goddamn charming. Like, that's the reason you need to play this game. I talked about Mario 3D World earlier in this video. And if that is a game that's, you know, a 3D platformer that's all about mechanics and level design, the comparison I make for Puppeteer, like in the 2D version, is it's kind of like Psychonauts is to like Mario, where that game was you know, it had some solid platforming mechanics and some interesting ideas, but the real draw of it was the characters and the aesthetic of the world and the writing and how clever it was and charming it was. That's what Puppeteer is like. It's just it's such like a whimsical experience. It feels kind of like the best of like Disney and Miyazaki and a little Tim Burton as well. Again, I can't stress enough how much this game surprised me. I urge everyone to go out there and please try this game. It'll win you over, I'm sure, if you don't have a cold, dead heart. And it's a fun game to boot. My number 2 game, 2013, is The Wonderful 101. I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, it's Hideki Kamiya. He kind of did it again. Creator of Bayonetta and Devil May Cry and Beautiful Joe and Okami. I mean, he doesn't make bad games. When I first started playing this game, I was kind of sweating. I was like, oh god, did he finally fuck up? I wasn't having a good time. I didn't understand the systems. The game doesn't do a really good job of explaining it to you, and it can be really frustrating if you try to beat your head against this game. But if you take a step back and you realize that every enemy is kind of like a puzzle, and you have all these tools in your arsenal, and it's all about finding which of these weapons is best for any given situation, you realize like there's actually a lot of depth to this game. This might even be the deepest game Kamiya has made in terms of mechanics. But it's not just fun to play. It's not just fun to play like Bayonetta is. Like it is awesome for the same fucking reasons that Bayonetta is. Meaning that it just keeps fucking escalating and getting crazier and more over the top, and you just keep doing these ridiculous things as the story gets like more and more outlandish. But where Bayonetta kind of like falters, where maybe some of those sequences aren't as fun, like I feel like Kamiya has finally figured out how to make those mini games, those homages to those old school games that he loves doing, finally entertaining. And a lot of the stuff that you do in this game that's not just the core gameplay is a blast. Like some of my favorite things in the game were like the punch out sequences, the punch out boss fights. It was just so fitting for how crazy and over the top the story was was becoming at the time. And I just love the characters and the personalities. And fucking Blue, he's like a cocky asshole, but it's funny. And I love the sincerity of Wonder Red, and how he's just the fucking best hero in the world. And you're like, yeah, that's right, you be fucking sincere and say that ridiculous attack name. And he's seriously one of my favorite characters of the year. I can't stress enough, if you give this game time, it'll win you over in a way that I was kind of, you know, surprised it did. And by the end of that game, it just crescendoed into this masterful fucking ridiculous, these masterful ridiculous moments that you know, I just, it's like I died with a fucking grin, like the fucking people did in the first Batman movie, because they had the Joker thing. I had the big smile on my face because I wore the shampoo and I shouldn't have. And oh man, The Wonderful 101 is so fucking good. I'm sorry more of you don't have a Wii U, but come on, with this, with Mario, there's some good fucking reasons to own the system. Oh man, Kamiya-san, you did it again! My favorite game of 2013, aka the definitively best game of 2013, aka the best game on any of these other lists, just disregard those. It's Guacamelee. That's right. Now I know I'm Brad, and I know it's a Metroidvania, and you're like, Brad likes all Metroidvanias. Fuck you. Listen, this is not a genre I take lightly, and I think this is a formula that has there's a lot of imitators, but there's very few who get all aspects of it right. I think Shadow Complex is an example of a game that lives up to the genre's namesake, Metroidvania, and I think this ranks up there with the best. But it has elements to it, you know, that sort of make it its own, like the aesthetic of this game, the you know, the art style, the music, the writing and the humor. It's all just really, really well done. But it's the mechanics that sort of push this one over the edge for me. Like, this is one of the best playing games of this entire year. The combat system is just so fun. The way all of your abilities that you get to navigate the world play into combat, to where you're uppercutting and bashing and bouncing the guys around the environment, ping-ponging them into each other, is just so fun and satisfying, to where it's like you just feel like you go into a room and you're just like, I'm gonna kill all these guys in one air juggle right now. It's just so goddamn satisfying in a way that, you know, other Metroidvanias are usually a little bit more simplistic about, you know, movement. This one really is about sort of just bombastic comboing, and it's just so goddamn fun. But the platforming, another thing that this genre seems to forget about sometimes, is really challenging and tricky and tight. You have to use all of your abilities constantly to navigate some of the trickier, challenging, you know, platforming segments in this game. And I did 100% this game. You have to do some ridiculous bullshit involving climbing a ridiculous tree and jumping on these disappearing platformers. Like, there's some borderline like Super Meat Boy caliber shit in this game, but because the mechanics are so tight, it fucking works. This is the complete fucking package, guys. I can't stress enough just how just fucking amazing this game is, in consideration of like the best Metroidvanias of all time. And again, you know, it's one of my favorite genres. It's not a real surprise that it's up here. Go play this goddamn game. I want a sequel. I want fucking a plushie. I want everything. Guacamelee. It's so good, guys. It's so goddamn good. And that's gonna do it. That's my top 10 of 2013. Thanks for listening. I love all of you. I hope you buy all of these games. Don't give me a thumbs down just because I like Gone Home. Give me a thumbs up if you like pizza and sex, because that's what matters here at the end of 2013 and the beginning of 2014. Now let's all pray together. Pray that Metal Gear Solid 5 is as amazing as we all want it to be. Goodbye.